The Los Angeles skyline glittered beneath a bruised sky, storm clouds gathering like an omen over the Santa Monica Mountains. Dominic Hale's mansion perched on the hillside like a monument to excess, all glass, steel, and California modernism, worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. Inside, the party hummed with carefully orchestrated opulence. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive suits brushed against designer dresses, and laughter echoed through rooms that cost more to decorate than to build. Emily Carter moved through the crowd like a ghost. Her black uniform was pristine, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun that made her look younger than her 24 years. She carried a silver tray of champagne flutes, her movements precise and practiced. 2 years. She'd spent 2 years perfecting this invisible act, becoming part of the furniture in Dominic Hale's world. 2 years of swallowing rage every time she saw his face. 2 years of planning for tonight. Emily, the head of house staff, Margaret, appeared at her elbow. The older woman's face was tight with stress. "Mr. Hale wants fresh ice in the study. The Waterford bucket, not the Baccarat." "Of course." Emily's voice was soft, deferential. "Perfect." She wound through the mansion's halls, past artwork worth millions, past windows that showcased Los Angeles spread out like scattered diamonds below. The study was on the 3rd floor, in the east wing. She'd memorized every room, every exit, every security camera's blind spot. Knowledge was survival. Knowledge was power. The study door was ajar. Inside, she could hear Dominic's voice, that low, commanding tone that made grown men nervous. "I don't care what Corso thinks he knows. This deal happens on my terms or it doesn't happen at all." A pause. "No. Tell him if he has something to say, he says it to my face." Emily pushed the door open carefully. Dominic stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, his frame silhouetted against the city lights. At 38, he was still imposing. 6'2", broad-shouldered, with dark hair graying at the temples and sharp features that photographs loved. He wore power like other men wore cologne. He glanced at her, nodded curtly, and returned to his call. "I'll handle it, I always do." Emily set down the ice bucket with steady hands, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd been this close to him hundreds of times, but tonight felt different. Tonight everything ended. As she turned to leave, Dominic's phone buzzed with a text, then another. His jaw tightened. "What now?" he muttered, swiping the screen. His expression darkened. "Son of a... Is everything all right, Mr. Hale?" Emily kept her voice neutral. He looked at her, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time in 2 years. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Suspicion? Recognition? Then it was gone. "Fine. Get back downstairs." Emily descended to the main level, where the party had grown louder. More guests had arrived, politicians, businessmen, a celebrity or two. Dominic's annual gathering attracted Los Angeles's elite, the people who pretended they didn't know where his money came from. The Mafia didn't exist in polite society. It was just investments and business ventures. She caught Margaret's eye and moved toward the kitchen, but something made her pause. Through the crowd, she spotted a man she didn't recognize, late 40s, wearing an expensive suit but scanning the room with predatory focus. His hand rested inside his jacket. Emily's pulse quickened. She grabbed her phone from her apron pocket and sent a single text to the number she'd memorized. "Now." The man by the entrance was joined by 2 others. They moved with purpose, spreading out through the ground floor. Guests didn't notice, too drunk, too self-absorbed, but Emily saw. She'd been trained to see. She abandoned her tray and headed for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The 3rd-floor hallway was empty, but she could hear voices from the study. Dominic was still on the phone, his tone sharp with anger. "I said I'll handle it, Vincent. You don't trust me after 15 years. Vincent Corso." Emily's blood ran cold. If Corso had made his move tonight, an explosion of sound erupted from downstairs. Gunfire, screaming. The party descended into chaos. Emily burst into the study. Dominic spun around, reaching for the gun in his desk drawer, but she was faster. She'd spent 2 years studying his every move. "Don't." Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "What the hell is going on?" Dominic's hand hovered over the drawer. His eyes were hard, calculating. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been waiting a long time for this moment." Emily moved toward the balcony doors. More gunfire below. Smoke was beginning to curl up from the ground floor. But not like this. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. "You're behind this." It wasn't a question. No, Emily's voice was fierce. I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to lose everything slowly, to feel what my father felt. But someone else wants you dead, and they're willing to burn everything to do it. Dominic's expression shifted. Surprise, confusion, then cold understanding. Marcus Carter. You're Marcus Carter's daughter. Emily Carter. She said her full name like a weapon. And yes, I've spent 2 years in your house watching you, learning you, planning how to destroy you. But those men downstairs? That's not my plan. The building shuddered. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. We don't have time for this, Emily said, moving to the balcony. The study was positioned over the mansion's infinity pool, 3 stories down. They've planted charges throughout the house. In about 30 seconds, this entire wing is going to blow. You expect me to trust you? Dominic pulled his gun from the drawer, aimed it at her chest. I expect you to want to live. Emily opened the balcony doors. Wind rushed in, carrying the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Below, bodies floated in the pool, guests who'd jumped or been thrown. The water was already red. You have 2 choices, stay here and burn, or take a chance on the pool. Why would you save me? Because I don't want you dead. I want you destroyed. There's a difference. Emily's voice cracked slightly. And because whoever did this killed innocent people. That was never part of my plan. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Men shouting. The door handle rattled. Dominic made his decision. He pocketed the gun and moved toward the balcony, but Emily stepped in front of him. No, you'll try to land on your feet and shatter your legs. We go together, and we go now. You're insane. 3 seconds. Emily grabbed his arm. 2. The door burst open. A man with an assault rifle appeared in the doorway. 1. Emily pushed. She used all her weight, all her strength, and shoved Dominic Hale over the balcony railing. His shout of rage and surprise was swallowed by the wind. Emily vaulted over after him, her body arcing through the night air. Time stretched. She saw the pool rushing up, saw Dominic's form hitting the water first, saw the mansion's windows light up with orange fire. The heat hit her back like a physical force. Then water, cold, shocking, swallowing her whole. Emily's lungs screamed. She kicked hard, fighting the weight of her uniform, the disorientation. Her head broke the surface just as the 3rd-floor study exploded outward in a ball of flame and glass. The shockwave hit the water, creating waves that tossed her like a doll. Debris rained down. Wood, metal, burning fragments that hissed when they hit the pool. Emily swam desperately toward the edge, her arms burning with effort. She dragged herself out onto the pool deck, coughing water and gasping for air. The mansion was an inferno now, flames consuming the east wing and spreading fast. The screaming had stopped. In its place was the roar of fire and the groan of collapsing structure. A hand grabbed her ankle. Emily spun, fist raised. But it was Dominic. He'd pulled himself out on the opposite side and crawled around to her. Blood ran from a cut above his eye, and his designer suit was ruined, but he was alive. Furious, but alive. You, he started, water streaming from his hair. Save it. Emily stood on shaking legs. Her carefully constructed cover was literally burning. 2 years of planning? Gone. But she was alive, and so was he, and that meant someone had outplayed them both. We need to move. If they had men inside, they'll have men outside to make sure no one escapes. As if to confirm her words, gunfire cracked from the mansion's front gate. Sirens wailed in the distance. Fire trucks, police, probably FBI given Dominic's status. Dominic grabbed her arm, spinning her around. His gray eyes were wild with rage and confusion and something else. Betrayal, maybe, though Emily couldn't understand why he'd feel betrayed by a maid. Who the hell are you really? He demanded, his voice raw. And I want the truth this time. All of it. Who sent you? Corso? The Colombians? Who? Emily met his gaze steadily, tasting blood and chlorine. Behind him, his empire burned. Around them, the bodies of his associates and innocent guests floated in water turned dark with ash and worse things. Everything she'd worked for had just exploded. Literally. But she was alive. And so was the man who'd destroyed her family. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. My name is Emily Carter, she said quietly, as flames painted their faces orange. Marcus Carter was my father. You ruined him 15 years ago. You took everything from my family. My mother died because of what you did to him. She pulled her arm free. I came here to make you pay. I spent 2 years becoming invisible in your world, learning your secrets. planning to take everything from you the way you took everything from us. Dominic's expression shifted. Recognition, memory, something that might have been regret. But this? Emily gestured at the burning mansion, at the carnage. This isn't me. Someone else wants us both dead. And until we figure out who, we're stuck with each other. The sirens were getting closer. Dominic's hand moved to his pocket, where his gun waited. Emily didn't flinch. If he was going to shoot her, there was nowhere left to run. Instead, he pulled out his phone, waterlogged and ruined. He cursed viciously and threw it into the fire. There's a car. Service entrance down the hill. His voice was hard, controlled. The shock was wearing off, and the criminal mastermind was taking over. We get there, we get out of here before the authorities arrive. Then you and I are going to have a very long conversation about the past. Agreed. They moved together through the smoke and chaos. Two people bound by hatred and circumstance, running from a fire that had consumed everything except the questions that mattered. Who wanted them dead? And why? As they disappeared into the Los Angeles night, the mansion collapsed behind them with a groan of surrendering steel and stone. By morning it would be ashes, just like Emily's carefully laid plans, just like Dominic's carefully constructed empire. Sometimes the universe forced you to start over. Sometimes it forced you to face the ghosts you'd been running from. And sometimes it pushed you off a balcony just to see if you'd fly or fall. The safe house smelled like mildew and desperation. Emily pushed open the door to the third-floor apartment in a crumbling building on South Broadway, in the heart of downtown L.A. The neighborhood had seen better days decades ago. Now it was a patchwork of closed storefronts, homeless encampments, and the kind of anonymity that money couldn't buy in the hills, which was exactly why she'd chosen it. Dominic stumbled through the doorway behind her, one hand pressed against his ribs. The adrenaline from their escape was wearing off, and pain was setting in. His face was pale beneath the soot and blood. Sit, Emily ordered, locking the door behind them with 3 separate deadbolts. The apartment was sparse, a beaten couch, a folding table, 2 chairs, and supplies she'd stashed over the past 6 months. Insurance, she'd called it, a contingency plan if everything went wrong. Everything had gone spectacularly wrong. Dawn was breaking over Los Angeles, gray light filtering through the grimy windows. Rain hammered against the glass. The storm had finally broken. Emily could hear it drumming on the roof, washing away the night's blood and ash. I said sit. She pushed Dominic toward the couch. He collapsed onto it with a grunt, his hand coming away from his ribs stained red. You're bleeding. Emily stripped off her ruined uniform jacket, standing in just a tank top and pants. Her arms were covered in bruises and cuts from the debris. Brilliant observation. Dominic's voice dripped with sarcasm, but his breathing was shallow. What are you, a doctor now? Along with Maid, an attempted murderer? I saved your life, after pushing me off a building. Into a pool. There's a difference. Emily grabbed a first aid kit from under the sink. She'd stocked this place like a bunker. Medical supplies, weapons, cash, fake IDs. Everything needed to disappear. Take off your shirt. Dominic's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but he complied. Beneath the ruined designer fabric, his torso was a roadmap of old scars and new injuries. A deep gash ran along his left side, probably from hitting the pool's edge. Emily knelt beside him, her hands steady as she cleaned the wound. Years of taking care of her dying mother had taught her basic field medicine. Years of preparing for this moment had taught her to compartmentalize. It's not deep enough to need stitches, she said, applying antiseptic. Dominic hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away. You'll live. Good to know my survival depends on the mercy of Marcus Carter's daughter. His voice was bitter. How old were you when he died? 12? 13? 9. Emily's hands tightened on the gauze. I was 9 years old when you destroyed him. When you sent him to prison on charges you fabricated. When you took his business, his reputation, everything he'd built. He was a criminal. So are you. Emily wrapped the bandage tightly, perhaps more tightly than necessary. The difference is you won. You crushed him, and then you walked away while my family fell apart. She stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, downtown LA was waking up. Steam rose from subway vents. Early morning workers hurried through the rain. Life continued, oblivious to the fact that the city's most powerful crime lord was bleeding on a couch 3 floors above them. My mother worked 3 jobs trying to keep us afloat, Emily continued, her voice distant. She died 6 years ago. Breast cancer. We couldn't afford the treatment that might have saved her. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love waste away because of money? Because of choices someone else made? Silence filled the apartment, broken only by the rain. Your father wasn't innocent. Dominic's voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier edge. Marcus Carter ran guns for the cartels. He laundered money through legitimate businesses. He ordered hits on people who crossed him. I know what he was. Emily turned to face him. I'm not a child anymore, Dominic. I've spent 15 years learning the truth about my father, about you, about this entire rotten world you both inhabited. But that doesn't change what you did to him. To us. Dominic leaned back against the couch, his gray eyes studying her with unsettling intensity. So you spent 2 years as my maid, serving me drinks, cleaning my house, watching, planning. He paused. What was the endgame, Emily? What was your grand revenge going to look like? Emily crossed her arms, the memory of her carefully constructed plan bitter in her mouth. I was going to destroy your business from the inside. I had evidence of your transactions, your connections. I was going to hand it all to the FBI, watch you go to prison the way my father did. Then I was going to take everything you owned, legally this time. Bankruptcies, liens, foreclosures. I wanted you to lose everything slowly, to feel every piece of your empire crumble the way ours did. Poetic. Dominic's lip curled slightly. But someone beat you to it. Someone destroyed both our plans. Emily moved to the table, pulling out a laptop she'd hidden in a locked drawer. Those men at the mansion weren't amateurs. They knew exactly where to place the charges, which guests to target first. This was military precision. She opened the laptop, pulling up news sites. The mansion fire was already breaking news. Mafia boss Dominic Hale's estate destroyed in massive explosion. Multiple casualties. The reports were confused, conflicting. Some said Hale was dead. Others reported him missing. The FBI was taking over the investigation. Your empire is collapsing as we speak, Emily said, scrolling through articles. Your associates are dead. Your mansion is gone. Every law enforcement agency in California is looking for you. By noon, you'll be the most wanted man in America. And you'll be right beside me. Dominic stood, moving to look over her shoulder despite his injury. You think they won't connect you to this? 2 years as my employee, present at the scene, now mysteriously missing. They'll call you an accomplice. Or worse. He was right. Emily's carefully cultivated invisibility had become a liability. Every background check she'd passed, every reference she'd faked, every moment of playing the perfect servant, all of it would now paint her as complicit. So we're both ghosts now, she said quietly. No, Dominic's voice hardened. We're both targets, and we need to figure out who's hunting us before they finish the job. He reached past her, typing on the laptop with surprising speed. He pulled up encrypted files, private servers that Emily had never seen before. His fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing systems that required passwords and biometric authentication she'd somehow bypassed in his injured state. The explosion wasn't random, Dominic muttered, his face inches from the screen. These coordinated hits, the timing, this required planning, months of it, maybe years. Emily watched him work, seeing a different side of the man she'd hated for so long. Not the polished crime lord in expensive suits, but the strategist who'd built an empire from nothing. The survivor. There, Dominic pointed at the screen. Security footage from the mansion's perimeter cameras. They're cloud-based, uploaded in real time. If the system caught anything before it went down, the footage was grainy but clear enough. Emily watched as armed men approached the mansion from multiple angles, their movements coordinated. They wore masks, but one of them paused to check his phone before entering. Dominic froze the frame, zooming in on the phone's screen. The image was blurry, but a symbol was visible, a geometric pattern that Emily didn't recognize. Do you know what that is? She asked. Dominic's jaw tightened. Yeah, I know it. He closed the laptop abruptly, his face pale. This is worse than I thought. What is it? A calling card. From someone I thought was dead. He moved to the window, staring out at the rain. Vincent Corso. The name hit Emily like a physical blow. Vincent Corso. Her research had mentioned him. Dominic's former partner. The man who'd helped him rise to power 15 years ago. The partnership had ended badly. Publicly. Corso had disappeared from Los Angeles shortly after Marcus Carter's downfall. Corso was there that night, Emily said slowly, memory clicking into place. When they arrested my father, I saw him. I was 9, watching from the stairs while they put my father in handcuffs. Corso was standing in our living room like he owned it. He thought he did own it. Dominic's voice was flat. The night we took down your father, It was supposed to be a joint operation. Corso and I would split Carter's territory, but I outmaneuvered him. I took everything. The connections, the routes, the money. I cut Corso out completely. You betrayed him. Emily felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and horror. The great Dominic Hale betrayed by his own tactics. I didn't betray him, I beat him. Dominic turned from the window. There's a difference. But Corso never forgave me. He disappeared, and I thought he'd crawled off to die somewhere quiet. Clearly I was wrong. Emily's mind raced through the implications. If Corso orchestrated this, if he's been planning it for 15 years, her phone buzzed. Not her regular phone. That was destroyed. This was a prepaid burner she kept for emergencies, a number only one person knew. She pulled it from her pocket, her blood running cold at the message on the screen. It was a photo. A young woman, 20 years old, with Emily's dark hair and her mother's green eyes. Sarah, her sister, sitting in what looked like a basement, hands bound, terror in her eyes. Below the photo, a message. She pays for both of your sins. 72 hours. Come alone or she dies. VC. The phone slipped from Emily's fingers, clattering on the floor. Dominic picked it up, his expression darkening as he read the message. Your sister? Emily couldn't speak. Her throat had closed, her chest constricting with panic. Sarah, baby Sarah, who'd been 5 when their mother died, who Emily had raised while working 3 jobs and planning revenge. Sarah, who was supposed to be safe at UCLA, living the normal life that Emily had sacrificed everything to give her. How did he? Emily's voice broke. She's not part of this. She doesn't know anything about you, about my plans. She's innocent. Corso doesn't care about innocent. Dominic's voice was grim. If he has your sister, it's because he knows she's the one thing that would break you, just like the mansion fire was meant to break me. Emily's legs gave out. She sank into one of the folding chairs, her hands shaking. 15 years of planning, 2 years of careful execution, and in one night everything had been stripped away. Her cover, her revenge, and now her sister, the only family she had left. He's been watching us, she whispered. Corso knew about my plans. He knew I was in your house. He's been orchestrating this entire thing. He's playing us against each other. Dominic set the phone down carefully. He destroys my empire, makes it look like you're involved. He takes your sister, uses her to control you. Then he sits back and watches us tear each other apart. Or work together. Emily looked up, meeting Dominic's eyes. That's what he doesn't expect. He thinks we'll fight. He thinks our history guarantees it. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the rain continued its steady assault on the city. Emergency sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, probably still responding to the mansion fire, or the aftermath. If we do this, he said finally, if we work together to find your sister and stop Corso, it doesn't erase the past. It doesn't make us friends. I don't want to be your friend. Emily's voice was steel. I want my sister safe, and I want the man who orchestrated this to pay. After that, you and I can settle our debts. Fair enough. Dominic extended his hand. Temporary truce. We save your sister. We stop Corso. Then we figure out what comes next. Emily stared at his hand, the hand that had signed the orders that destroyed her father, that had built an empire on blood and betrayal. Every instinct screamed at her not to trust him, but Sarah's terrified face haunted her vision. She took his hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm despite the cold apartment. 72 hours, she said. That's all we have. Then we'd better get started. Dominic released her hand and moved back to the laptop. Corso will have gone underground, but he'll need resources. Money, men, safe houses. He's been planning this for years, which means he's been building a network right under my nose. Emily joined him at the table, pushing aside her emotions. There would be time for fear later. Time for grief. Right now, she needed to be the strategist she'd trained herself to become. I have contacts, she said. People I've cultivated over the past 2 years. Some of your lower-level associates who didn't attend the party. They might know something. And I know where Corso used to operate his old patterns. Dominic pulled up a map of Los Angeles. He's arrogant. He'll go somewhere that means something to him. Somewhere connected to when he still had power. As they worked marking locations and making plans, Emily caught Dominic watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Not quite respect, not quite trust, but recognition maybe. The acknowledgement that they were more alike than either wanted to admit. Both of them were survivors. Both had lost everything in a single night. and both would do anything, even work with their worst enemy, to protect what little they had left. The rain washed down the windows, and somewhere in this city of angels and demons, Vincent Corso was waiting, watching, knowing that he'd set the perfect trap. What he didn't know was that sometimes, when you push people off a balcony, they don't fall. Sometimes they learn to fly. The underground gambling den in Koreatown reeked of cigarette smoke and broken dreams. Emily followed Dominic through the narrow corridor, past peeling wallpaper and flickering fluorescent lights that hummed like dying insects. It had been 18 hours since they'd received the photo of Sarah. 54 hours remained. Every second that ticked by felt like a knife twisting deeper into Emily's chest. "Keep your head down," Dominic muttered, his hand resting inside his jacket where he'd concealed a gun they'd acquired from one of Emily's contacts. "These people know me, but they don't know you. Let me do the talking." The corridor opened into a basement room thick with smoke and tension. Card tables lined the walls, surrounded by men who looked like they'd kill for the right price, or the wrong look. In the corner, a makeshift bar served drinks that probably violated a dozen health codes. The air conditioning had given up years ago, leaving the room sweltering despite the rain that continued to pound the city above. A man at the nearest table looked up, his scarred face registering shock. "Jesus Christ. Hale?" The room went silent. Cards stopped shuffling. Conversations died. Every eye turned toward them. Dominic stepped forward with the confidence of a man who still believed he owned the world, despite having lost everything 24 hours ago. "I need information, Tommy." "About Vincent Corso." Tommy Chen stood slowly, his chair scraping against concrete. He was built like a boxer gone to seed, with cauliflower ears and knuckles that had broken too many faces. "You got some balls showing up here. Half the city thinks you're dead. The other half is looking to collect the bounty on your head." "There's a bounty?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. Tommy's eyes slid to her, assessing. 5 million. FBI wants him alive for questioning. The Colombians want him dead for the shipment that burned up in that mansion. And word is, Corso's people want him breathing just long enough to suffer. He smiled without warmth. "So yeah, sweetheart, there's a bounty. I'll make it worth your while to forget you saw me," Dominic said. "I need to know where Corso's operating from, safe houses, meeting spots, anything." Tommy laughed, a harsh sound. "You think I'm stupid enough to cross Corso? The man just took down Dominic fucking Hale in one night. He's the new king, and kings don't forgive. Corso's not king of anything yet." Dominic's voice hardened. "He's a ghost playing puppeteer, and ghosts can be exposed. But I need information. Can't help you, Hale, even if I wanted to." Tommy started to turn away, but Emily stepped forward. "He has my sister." Her voice cut through the room's ambient noise. "Sarah Carter, 20 years old, college student. She's got nothing to do with any of this, and Corso took her to get to me." Tommy paused, something flickering across his scarred face. "Carter? You're Marcus Carter's kid?" "His daughter, Emily." She held his gaze. "You knew him?" Everyone knew Marcus. He was old school, had codes, lines he wouldn't cross. Tommy glanced at Dominic. Not like some people. Marcus didn't deal in human trafficking, didn't hurt kids. If Corso's got your sister, that's not Marcus's world. That's something else. "Which is why I need your help," Emily pressed. "Please, she's innocent." The room remained tense. Men exchanged glances. Finally, Tommy sighed, running a hand over his shaved head. "There's a warehouse. East LA near the river. Used to be one of Corso's distribution points back when he and Hale were partners. Word is he's been using it again, moving people in and out at night." "Address," Dominic demanded. Tommy rattled off a location. Emily committed it to memory, her heart hammering. It could be a lead. It could be a trap. But it was something. "One more thing," Tommy said as they turned to leave. "Corso's not working alone. He's got backing. Serious money. Serious muscle. Whatever he's building, it's bigger than taking you down, Hale. You're just the first piece." Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The city smelled like wet asphalt and ozone. Emily and Dominic hurried to the stolen Honda Civic they'd been using. Anonymous, forgettable, perfect for staying invisible. "Could be a trap," Dominic said, starting the engine. "I know." Emily stared out at the blurred lights of Koreatown. "We're going anyway." They drove through Los Angeles, weaving from neighborhood to neighborhood. The city was a study in contrasts. Glittering skyscrapers gave way to industrial wastelands, mansions perched above streets where people slept in tents. Emily had spent 2 years moving through Dominic's world of wealth. but she'd grown up in the other Los Angeles, the one that struggled and survived. "Tell me about Sarah," Dominic said suddenly. Emily glanced at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because if we're going to save her, I need to know who we're saving, what matters to her, what Corso might use against her." It was tactical, but Emily appreciated the thought anyway. "She's studying biochemistry at UCLA. Wants to be a doctor, the kind that actually helps people, not just the rich ones." Emily's voice softened. "She's brilliant, kind. She volunteers at a free clinic in South Central every weekend. After our mother died, I raised her. I worked 3 jobs and made sure she never had to make the choices I did." "What choices were those?" Emily was quiet for a moment. "After Mom died, I had 2 paths. I could try to give Sarah a normal life, let the past stay buried. Or I could seek revenge and risk everything. I chose both. I got Sarah into a good school, made sure she had opportunities, and I started planning how to destroy you." "That's why you spent 2 years as a maid," Dominic said. "Not just for access, for her, to make sure she never had to know what you were doing." "She thinks I work in hotel management." Emily's laugh was bitter. "She thinks her big sister has a boring, respectable job. She has no idea I've spent 2 years planning to take down a mafia boss. And now that same mafia boss is her only hope." Dominic's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "For what it's worth, I remember your father. Not the version you knew, the one who read you bedtime stories and taught you to ride a bike. I knew the other Marcus Carter, the one who ordered 3 men killed for skimming profits, the one who nearly started a war with the Russians over a territorial dispute." "I know who he was," Emily said. "I told you, I'm not a child. I've read the police reports, the witness statements. My father was a criminal, but he was also my father, and what you did to him broke our family." "What I did to him," Dominic repeated slowly, "was respond to what he did to me." Emily turned to stare at him. "What?" Dominic pulled the car onto the shoulder of the freeway, putting it in park. The rain drummed on the roof as he turned to face her. "The night we took down your father wasn't about territory or money. It was personal. 6 months before his arrest, Marcus ordered a hit. The target was supposed to be one of the Colombian suppliers who was trying to expand into LA. But the intelligence was bad. Or maybe it was intentional. I've never known for sure." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Emily could see the tension in his jaw. "The hit squad went to the wrong house. They killed a woman and her 15-year-old son. The woman was my sister, Elena. The boy was my nephew, David." Emily's breath caught. "What?" "Marcus Carter killed my family," Dominic continued. "So yes, I took everything from him. I fabricated evidence. I made deals with the feds. I crushed his organization and sent him to prison where he died 6 months later. I wanted him to suffer the way I suffered." The car was silent except for the rain. Emily's mind reeled, trying to reconcile this new information with everything she'd believed for 15 years. "My father never mentioned," he probably didn't know the details. "The Colombians kept it quiet. Bad for business to admit they'd massacred an innocent family. But I knew. And Corso knew. He helped me plan the takedown. He was there, standing in your living room, because he'd lost people too. Corso's brother was killed in the crossfire of one of Marcus's operations." Emily felt like the ground had opened beneath her. "So the man I've been planning to destroy for 15 years was just, what? Getting revenge for his own murdered family? There are no heroes in this story, Emily." Dominic's voice was quiet. "Just people who've lost things. People who've made terrible choices trying to balance the scales. Your father wasn't innocent. Neither was I. Neither was Corso. We're all just survivors trying to justify the damage we've caused." Emily pressed her hands to her face, her mind spinning. 15 years of hatred, of planning, of defining herself by her desire for revenge. And it had all been built on a foundation she'd never fully understood. Her father had killed Dominic's sister and nephew. Dominic had destroyed her father in return. And now Corso, who'd lost his own brother, was destroying them both. "It's cycles," she whispered. "It's just cycles of revenge, going back and back with no end, until someone chooses to end it." Dominic put the car back in drive, pulling onto the freeway. "That's the price of power in this world, Emily. Every choice creates a debt, every action has a cost, and eventually, everyone pays." They drove in silence toward East LA, each lost in thoughts of ghosts and debts that could never be fully settled. The warehouse district emerged from the urban sprawl, a maze of corrugated metal buildings and cracked asphalt, forgotten by the city's development boom. Dominic parked 3 blocks away and they approached on foot. The address Tommy had given them was a squat, unremarkable building with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. It looked abandoned, but Emily had learned to read the signs. Fresh tire tracks in the mud, cigarette butts that hadn't been rained on yet, a padlock on the door that was new despite the rust on the chain. "Someone's using it," she murmured. Dominic nodded, pulling his gun. "We go in quiet. Assess the situation. If Sarah's in there, we get her out." Emily checked her own weapon, a Glock 19 she'd acquired from a black market dealer that morning. She'd never fired a gun at a person before. She'd trained, practiced at ranges under false names, prepared for this moment. But preparation and reality were different countries. They circled the building, finding a side entrance with a broken lock. The door opened with a rusty shriek that made them both freeze, listening for alarms or footsteps. Silence. They slipped inside. The warehouse interior was massive, filled with ancient shipping containers and broken pallets. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, creating pools of silver among the shadows. Emily's heart hammered so loudly she was sure it would give them away. Then she heard it, a muffled sob coming from the back of the warehouse. She moved without thinking, Dominic grabbing her arm to hold her back. She shook him off, advancing toward the sound. Around a container through a gap in stacked crates she saw a cage, makeshift, built from chain-link fencing and 2x4s. And inside, Sarah. Emily's voice broke. Her sister sat huddled in the corner, her clothes torn, her face bruised. When she heard Emily's voice, her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. "Emily?" Sarah's voice was hoarse. "Oh God, Emily, it's a trap. You have to..." Lights flooded the warehouse, blinding industrial floods that turned night into day. Emily spun, raising her gun, but they were surrounded. Men emerged from behind containers and crates, at least 10 of them, all armed. And from the warehouse's main entrance, a figure walked forward. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit somehow unwrinkled despite the warehouse setting. He moved with the confidence of a man who'd planned every detail, anticipated every move. Vincent Corso. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "And Dominic Hale. Together. I must admit I didn't expect you to cooperate so readily. I thought I'd have to work harder to get you in the same room." "Corso." Dominic's voice was ice. "Let the girl go. She's not part of this." "Oh, but she is." Corso smiled. "She's part of the beautiful symmetry of it all. You see, 15 years ago, the 3 of us, you, me, and Marcus Carter, we formed a triangle, each of us taking from the others, each of us losing something precious. But triangles are unstable shapes. They collapse." He gestured around the warehouse. "So I've built something new, something that requires both of you to understand the price of the power you've wielded so carelessly." Emily kept her gun trained on Corso, but she could feel the men surrounding them, could see the laser sights dancing across her chest. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand," Corso said simply. "I want Dominic to feel what it's like to have his empire burn, the way my brother burned in that warehouse fire," Marcus ordered. "I want you, Emily, to understand that revenge doesn't heal wounds. It just creates new ones. And I want both of you to watch as I build something better from the ashes of your failures." "You're insane," Dominic said. "I'm practical." Corso's smile never wavered. "And I'm patient. 15 years I've waited, building alliances, gathering resources, watching you both. Yes, Emily, I've known about your little infiltration for months. I've watched you play Maid while Dominic played King. 2 people so consumed by the past that neither saw the future coming." He snapped his fingers. 2 of his men moved toward Sarah's cage. "No!" Emily lunged forward, but Dominic grabbed her, holding her back as guns swung in their direction. "The girl lives," Corso said. "For now. As long as you cooperate. You see, I don't want to kill you, Dominic. Death is too quick, too merciful. I want you to live in a world where you have nothing. No empire, no respect, no power. Just the knowledge that you've lost everything." He turned his gaze to Emily. "And you, dear girl, you've spent 15 years hating the wrong man. Marcus Carter wasn't some tragic hero destroyed by Dominic's ambition. He was a butcher who killed innocents. Dominic took him down, yes, but in doing so he became exactly what Marcus was. And now you're becoming what Dominic is. The cycle continues. Unless someone breaks it," Emily said quietly. Corso laughed. "Oh, I'm breaking it. By destroying you both." By taking everything you've built, Dominic's empire, Emily's revenge, all of it, and showing this city that the old ways are finished. What old ways? Dominic's voice was cold. Men like us, ruling through fear and violence, operating in shadows while the world pretends we don't exist. Corso's eyes gleamed. I'm bringing everything into the light. I've already given the FBI evidence of your operations, Dominic. By tomorrow, half your associates will be arrested. The rest will be dead or running. And Emily, your identity, your plans, your 2 years of deception, it's all documented. You'll be wanted as an accomplice. He gestured to his men. Take them to the secondary location and bring the girl. I want them to have time to contemplate their choices before the end. As Corso's men moved in, guns raised, Emily met Dominic's eyes. She saw her own desperation reflected there, her own calculation. They'd walked into a trap. They'd underestimated their enemy, and now Sarah would pay the price. But Corso had made one mistake. He'd told them the truth, and the truth, Emily had learned over 2 years of careful planning, was the most dangerous weapon of all. She just had to figure out how to use it. The drive to Corso's Malibu estate took 45 minutes, but to Emily, it felt like hours. They were separated, Emily in one black SUV with 3 armed guards, Dominic in another vehicle ahead of them, and Sarah in a third car behind. Through the tinted windows, Emily watched Los Angeles give way to the Pacific Coast Highway, the ocean churning gray and violent under storm clouds that refused to break. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, pregnant with electricity. One of the guards, a man with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his eyebrow, kept his gun trained on her the entire drive. Emily sat perfectly still, her mind racing through scenarios, probabilities, escape routes. All of them ended badly. Corso had planned this perfectly. He'd anticipated their every move, led them exactly where he wanted them. And now he had all 3 of them, Emily, Dominic, and Sarah, pieces on a chessboard he'd been arranging for 15 years. The SUV turned off the highway onto a private road that wound up into the Malibu hills. They passed through 2 security checkpoints, each manned by armed guards who waved them through with military precision. This wasn't some improvised operation. Corso had built a fortress. The estate emerged from the darkness like something from a magazine, all glass and white stone, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. It made Dominic's destroyed mansion look modest by comparison. Lights blazed from every window, and as they pulled up to the main entrance, Emily counted at least a dozen more guards patrolling the grounds. They hauled her out of the SUV roughly. The ocean wind hit her face, carrying salt spray and the smell of expensive landscaping. Ahead, she saw Dominic being dragged from his vehicle, his hands zip-tied behind his back. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent exchange of understanding. They were in this together now, whether they liked it or not. Sarah was brought out last, and Emily's heart broke at the sight of her sister. Sarah's face was swollen from crying, her clothes filthy from the warehouse cage. When she saw Emily, she tried to run forward, but the guards held her back. "I'm sorry," Sarah sobbed. "Emmy, I'm so sorry. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill you." "It's okay, baby," Emily called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's going to be okay. I promise." But promises felt hollow when you were surrounded by men with guns, standing on the estate of a man who'd orchestrated the destruction of everything you'd worked for. They were marched into the mansion, a study in modern luxury with marble floors, contemporary art on the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the violent ocean below. Corso was waiting in what looked like a study, sitting behind an ornate desk with a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked completely at ease, like a CEO about to conduct a board meeting rather than a man holding 3 people hostage. "Please sit." He gestured to 3 chairs arranged in front of his desk. When no one moved, he nodded to his guards, who forced them down. Emily found herself between Dominic and Sarah, close enough to touch them but unable to do anything to protect them. Corso studied them like specimens in a lab. "Do you know what this house cost me? $47 million. I bought it 3 years ago, using money I'd spent a decade accumulating. Money from legitimate businesses, tech investments, real estate, pharmaceuticals, all completely legal." He stood, walking to the window. The Pacific churned below, waves crashing against the rocks. "That's what you never understood, Dominic. Power doesn't come from fear anymore. It comes from legitimacy, from being so embedded in the system that you become indistinguishable from it. Is there a point to this?" Dominic's voice was flat. "Or are you just enjoying the sound of your own voice?" Corso turned, his smile sharp. "The point is that while you were playing Kingpin, living in your glass mansion, and pretending you controlled this city, I was building something real. Something that will outlast all of us." He moved back to his desk, pulling out a folder. "Emily, you spent 2 years researching Dominic's operations. But did you ever think to research mine? Did you wonder where I'd been for the past 15 years? Emily said nothing, but her mind was already working. Corso's confidence wasn't just arrogance. It was based on something solid. He had resources, connections, a plan that extended far beyond revenge. "I've been building an empire that doesn't rely on violence or intimidation," Corso continued. "I've been partnering with people who have real power. Politicians, corporate executives, law enforcement officials. I've made myself indispensable to this city's infrastructure, and now, with Dominic out of the way, there's no one left to challenge me." "Except the FBI," Emily said quietly. "You said you gave them evidence. That means they're investigating. That means you're on their radar." Corso's smile widened. "Oh, Emily, you still don't understand. The evidence I gave them was carefully curated. It implicates Dominic and his associates, but it exonerates me completely. In fact, it makes me look like a victim, a reformed businessman who tried to go legitimate but was threatened by Hale's criminal enterprise." He opened the folder, spreading photographs across the desk. Images of Dominic meeting with known criminals, documents with his signature, bank records showing money laundering operations. And in several photos, Emily herself was visible in the background, serving drinks, standing near doorways, always present at crucial moments. "You see?" Corso tapped one of the photos showing Emily. "To any investigator, this looks like a conspiracy. Dominic Hale and his accomplice, Emily Carter, running a criminal empire together. The fact that you're Marcus Carter's daughter only strengthens the narrative. Like father, like daughter." Emily's stomach turned. He was right. Every moment she'd spent in Dominic's house, every carefully documented piece of evidence she'd gathered for her own revenge, Corso had twisted it into proof of her complicity. "And Sarah?" Emily forced the words out. "Where does she fit into your narrative?" "Collateral damage." Corso's casual tone made Emily want to lunge across the desk at him. "A tragic victim of her sister's criminal lifestyle. The authorities will find her body with yours. A murder-suicide, perhaps. Dominic killed you both before taking his own life. Neat. Tragic. Final. You're going to stage our deaths," Dominic said. It wasn't a question. "Not stage. Execute." Corso's voice hardened. "You both deserve to die for what you've done. But unlike you, I don't take pleasure in violence. It's simply necessary to close this chapter and begin the next." He snapped his fingers and more guards entered the room. "Take them to the lower level. The room I prepared. I'll be down shortly to oversee the arrangements." As the guards hauled them to their feet, Emily's mind raced desperately for options. They were outnumbered, outgunned, trapped in a fortress on a cliff with nowhere to run. In movies, the heroes always found some clever escape. In reality, 3 people against 20 armed men wasn't a fight. It was an execution with extra steps. They were marched down a hallway, then down a steel staircase that descended into the mansion's lower level. The luxury disappeared here. Concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, the utilitarian bones of the building. They passed a wine cellar, a gym, storage rooms. At the end of the corridor was a heavy steel door. One of the guards unlocked it, and they were shoved inside. The room was large, windowless, with concrete walls and exposed pipes running across the ceiling. In the center stood 3 chairs, already prepared with zip-tie restraints. This was an execution chamber, Emily realized with cold horror. Corso had built this specifically for them, but as the guards forced them toward the chairs, Emily noticed something: a ventilation grate near the floor, partially hidden behind stacked cardboard boxes, and near the ceiling a sprinkler system with a distinctive red handle on the wall marked "Fire Suppression, Manual Override." It wasn't much, but it was something. "Please," Sarah whimpered as they tied her to the chair. "Please, I don't want to die. I don't want—" "Sarah, look at me." Emily twisted in her own chair, meeting her sister's terrified eyes. "Listen to my voice. Remember when you were 7 and you were afraid of the dark? What did I tell you?" Sarah's breath hitched. You said fear is just a story we tell ourselves. We can change the story." "That's right. We can change the story." Emily held her sister's gaze, trying to communicate something beyond words. "Trust me. Stay alert. Be ready." The guards finished securing them and filed out, leaving just 2 men to watch them. The door closed with an ominous clang. Dominic leaned back in his chair, seemingly relaxed despite the zip ties cutting into his wrists. You know, Corso always was a theatrical bastard. Could have just shot us at the warehouse. Instead, we get the full villain monologue and execution chamber. He wants us to suffer, Emily said, testing her restraints. Too tight. She'd need a distraction to work them loose. He wants us to know we lost. We haven't lost yet. Dominic's voice was quiet, meant only for them. I counted 23 guards on the property. If we can get out of this room, we have maybe 30 seconds before they converge on this level. The stairs we came down are the only exit from the lower level, which means we'd be trapped anyway. One of the guards interrupted. He was the same man from the SUV with the scarred eyebrow. So save your breath. In about 10 minutes, Corso's going to come down here, put a bullet in each of your heads and stage it to look like a murder-suicide. Quick, professional, final. Why wait 10 minutes? Emily asked, keeping her voice conversational. Why not just do it now? Because Corso wants to see the light go out of your eyes personally. The guard smiled without warmth. 15 years he's been planning this. He wants to savor it. Emily glanced at the fire suppression system, then at Dominic. His eyes followed hers, understanding immediately. But they'd need to get the guards closer first. Can I ask you something? Emily directed the question at the scarred guard. How much is Corso paying you? Because I'm guessing it's not enough for murder. Lady, I've done worse for less. I believe you. Emily shifted in her chair, making herself look smaller, more vulnerable. But here's the thing. When this is over, when we're dead and Corso's story goes public, you think he'll keep you around? You'll be a loose end, a witness, and Corso doesn't leave loose ends. The guard's expression flickered, just for a second, but Emily saw it. Doubt. She's right, Dominic added, picking up the thread. I've worked with men like Corso. Hell, I was a man like Corso. The moment this job is done, you become a liability. He'll probably have you killed before sunrise. Shut up. But the guard's hand had moved to his weapon, nervous energy replacing casual confidence. How much? Emily pressed. 50,000? 100? Whatever it is, it's not worth your life. But I can offer you something better. You let us go, and you disappear with enough money to start over anywhere in the world. Clean. Safe. You don't have that kind of money. Dominic does. Emily looked at the man beside her. How much do you have in emergency funds? Liquid assets you can access right now? Dominic was silent for a moment, then said, 15 million. Cryptocurrency, untraceable. I can transfer it from my phone in under 60 seconds. The guard laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Your phone's upstairs with Corso. Actually, Dominic said slowly, it's not. You took a phone from my jacket pocket, but that was a decoy. My real phone is in my boot. Encrypted biometric lock, impossible to access without my thumbprint. Emily felt a surge of hope. It could be a bluff, but Dominic's voice carried absolute certainty. The second guard, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward. Even if that's true, we let you go, we're dead. Corso will hunt us down. Not if Corso's dead, Emily said. Both guards stared at her. Think about it, Emily continued, her voice gaining strength. Corso's not invincible. He's one man with a plan that only works if we die quietly. But if we escape, if we expose him, if we survive, his entire operation crumbles. And with $15 million, you two could be on a beach in Thailand before anyone even knows what happened. The scarred guard exchanged a look with his partner. Emily could see the calculation happening, greed and fear warring with self-preservation. How do we know you won't kill us the moment you're free? The second guard asked. Because we're not killers. Sarah spoke up suddenly, her voice stronger than Emily expected. My sister spent 2 years working for Dominic, and she never hurt anyone. She's not like these men. Neither am I. We just want to live. It was a gamble. A desperate, unlikely gamble. But Emily had learned that desperate situations required impossible choices. The scarred guard holstered his weapon. Show me the phone. Dominic nodded toward his left boot. Inside, against my ankle. You'll need to cut my restraints to reach it. Like hell. The guard knelt down, pulling a knife. He cut the boot's laces, pulling it off roughly. And there, tucked into a custom pocket against the leather, was a phone. The guard pulled it out, powering it on. The screen lit up with a fingerprint prompt. I need my hands free, Dominic said. Can't unlock it with my wrists tied. The guards exchanged another look. This was the moment, the critical decision point. Either they committed to this insane plan, Or they shot all three of them and prayed Corso would never find out about the conversation. The scarred guard made his choice. He cut Dominic's wrist restraints. Dominic moved fast. His freed hand shot out, grabbing the guard's knife and driving it into the man's shoulder in one fluid motion. The guard screamed, stumbling back. The second guard reached for his gun, but Emily was already moving. She'd been working her restraints loose while talking, using the slight give in the plastic to create space. Now she pulled her wrists free and launched herself from the chair, catching the second guard off balance. They hit the concrete hard, the gun skittering away. Sarah screamed, still tied to her chair. Dominic was grappling with the scarred guard, both men fighting for control of the dropped weapon. Emily scrambled for the loose gun, her fingers closing around cold metal. Stop! She aimed at both guards, her hands shaking but steady enough. Everyone stop or I will shoot. The room froze. The scarred guard was on the ground, blood spreading from his shoulder. The second guard had his hands up, eyes wide. Dominic stood between them, breathing hard. The knife, Emily said to Dominic, cut Sarah loose. While Dominic freed her sister, Emily kept the gun trained on both guards. Her heart hammered so hard, she thought it might break through her ribs. She'd never pointed a gun at a person before. The weight of it, the knowledge that she could end a life with a twitch of her finger, it was terrifying and intoxicating in equal measure. What now? Sarah asked, her voice shaking as Dominic cut through her restraints. Now we get out of here before Corso realizes something's wrong. Dominic grabbed the second guard's gun and radio. How long until his 10-minute timeline is up? The scarred guard, still clutching his bleeding shoulder, spat blood. You just made the biggest mistake of your lives. Wouldn't be the first time today. Dominic knocked the man unconscious with a precise blow to the temple, then did the same to the second guard. We have maybe 5 minutes before someone checks on them. The fire suppression system, Emily said, nodding toward the red handle. If we trigger it, it'll cause chaos upstairs. Sprinklers, alarms, evacuation protocols. It might buy us enough confusion to reach an exit. Might, Dominic agreed. Or it might alert everyone to our exact location. You have a better idea? He didn't. Dominic pulled the fire suppression handle. Immediately, alarms shrieked throughout the building. Sprinklers activated, water cascading from the ceiling. Emergency lights began strobing. Move! Dominic yanked open the door, checking the corridor. Clear. They ran for the stairs, water streaming from ceiling sprinklers, alarms wailing. Sarah stumbled and Emily grabbed her arm, half dragging her sister forward. They hit the stairwell and started climbing. Above, Emily could hear shouting, footsteps pounding. Corso's guards were mobilizing. They burst through the door into the main level, into chaos. Water poured from sprinklers throughout the mansion. Guards ran in different directions, some heading for exits, others trying to locate the source of the alarm. Corso's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, shouting orders. Side exit, Dominic said, pointing toward a hallway. Through the kitchen, gunfire erupted behind them. Wood splintered from a doorframe inches from Emily's head. She spun, returning fire without thinking. Years of target practice translating into muscle memory. One of Corso's guards went down, clutching his leg. They ran through the kitchen, a space of stainless steel and marble that could have served a restaurant, and out a side door into the night. The ocean wind hit them like a fist, carrying rain that had started falling again. The property stretched out before them, a maze of gardens and pathways illuminated by security lights. The cars, Sarah gasped, pointing toward the circular driveway where their transport vehicles still sat. But between them and the cars stood a line of armed guards, weapons raised, and emerging from the mansion's main entrance, walking calmly despite the chaos, was Vincent Corso. He'd changed into a rain jacket, and he held a pistol loosely at his side. I underestimated you, he called out over the rain and alarms. I should have known you'd try something desperate. But look around, Emily. Dominic, you're on a cliff, surrounded by my men, with nowhere left to run. He was right. Behind them was the mansion. To their sides, more guards were closing in. And ahead was Corso's line of defense, blocking the only way off the property. Sarah, Emily whispered, when I say run, you run for those cars. You take one, and you drive until you're somewhere safe. You call the FBI, you tell them everything. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. Emily looked at her sister, memorizing her face. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. But you have to survive this. Someone has to survive this. Dominic stepped forward, drawing Corso's attention. You want me, Corso? You want your revenge? Then take it. But let them go. Emily and Sarah. They're not part of what happened 15 years ago. This is between you and me. How noble. Corso sneered. The great Dominic Hale, finding a conscience at the end. But you're wrong. Emily made herself part of this the moment she walked into your house with revenge in her heart. And Sarah? She's just the price of doing business. He raised his gun, aiming at Dominic. I'm going to kill you now. Then I'm going to kill Emily, then her sister, and then I'm going to build an empire on the ashes of your failure. Emily saw it in slow motion, Corso's finger tightening on the trigger, Dominic standing perfectly still, accepting his fate. She saw Sarah's face, twisted in horror. She saw the guards closing in from all sides. And she saw beyond them all something Corso had missed. Headlights, coming up the private road fast. Multiple vehicles, their sirens silent but their speed unmistakable. FBI. They'd tracked Dominic here, or maybe someone had tipped them off. Either way, salvation was 30 seconds away. Run! Emily grabbed Sarah's hand and bolted toward the cars. Dominic moved simultaneously, firing at Corso's line of guards. The night erupted into gunfire, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Emily felt something hot graze her shoulder, a bullet so close she could feel its wake. She pushed Sarah ahead of her, toward the nearest SUV. Behind them, tires screeched as the FBI vehicles burst through the front gate, agents spilling out with weapons drawn. Corso's guards scattered, caught between the advancing FBI and their employer's demand to stop the escaping prisoners. In the confusion, Emily reached the SUV, yanking the door open. Keys in the ignition. Thank God for small mercies. Get in! She shoved Sarah into the passenger seat and dove behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. But where was Dominic? She spotted him through the rain-streaked windshield, still exchanging fire with Corso's men. He was pinned down behind a concrete planter, FBI closing in from one side, Corso's guards from the other. Emmy, we have to go, Sarah screamed. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at her to drive, to save her sister, to escape while they still could. Dominic had destroyed her father. He'd ruined her family. For 15 years, she'd dreamed of watching him suffer, but he'd also saved them in that execution chamber. He'd taken a bullet meant for Sarah. He'd stood between them and Corso's gun. Damn it. Emily threw the SUV into gear and stomped on the accelerator. But instead of heading for the exit, she drove straight toward Dominic's position. What are you doing? Sarah shrieked. Something stupid. Emily cranked the wheel, bringing the SUV sideways between Dominic and the guard's line of fire. The vehicle shuddered as bullets punched through metal and glass. Dominic, get in! He didn't hesitate. He dove through the open rear door and Emily was already accelerating again, tires screaming on wet pavement. She aimed for the front gate, where FBI vehicles blocked the way. But there was a gap, barely wide enough, but possible. Hold on! Emily gunned the engine, praying the SUV's weight would be enough. They hit the gap at 40 miles per hour, metal screaming as the sides scraped against FBI cars. Then they were through, fishtailing onto the private road. Behind them, the Malibu estate descended into chaos. Gunfire, shouting. The FBI assault on Corso's fortress. Emily didn't look back. She focused on the road ahead, on getting Sarah to safety, on surviving the next 10 minutes. That was insane, Dominic said from the back seat, breathing hard. You came back for me. Don't read into it, Emily snapped. But her hands were shaking on the wheel. We're not friends. We're not even allies. You're just more useful alive than dead. But she'd come back. Despite everything, despite 15 years of hatred, she'd turned around and driven into gunfire to save the man who'd destroyed her father. Maybe Corso had been right. Maybe they were all just trapped in cycles of revenge and violence, making the same mistakes over and over. Or maybe, just maybe, someone could choose differently. The diner sat on a lonely stretch of Highway 1, 200 miles north of Los Angeles. Emily watched through the rain-streaked window as gray waves crashed against black rocks below. 7 days had passed since the Malibu estate. 7 days since the FBI raid that had torn apart Vincent Corso's operation. 7 days since everything had changed. The coffee in front of her had gone cold, but she didn't order another. Across from her, Sarah stared at her own untouched cup, her hands wrapped around the ceramic for warmth that wasn't really needed. The bruises on her sister's face had faded to yellow-green, but the haunted look in her eyes remained. He's late, Sarah said quietly. He'll come. Emily checked her phone for the 100th time. One unread message sent 3 hours ago. Mendocino Diner. Noon. Come alone. It was 12:17 now. The past week had been a blur of FBI interrogations, protective custody, and news reports that seemed to multiply by the hour. The media had descended on the story like vultures. Mafia boss Dominic Hale captured in FBI raid. Crime empire collapses. Dozens arrested. Vincent Corso's body had been found in the mansion's wine cellar. A single gunshot wound to the head. Self-inflicted, according to the FBI. He'd chosen death over capture, unwilling to face the exposure of everything he'd built. Emily had watched the news coverage from a safe house in San Diego. FBI agents stationed outside her door. They'd questioned her for hours about her infiltration of Dominic's organization, about her father's criminal history, about her intentions. She'd told them everything, or almost everything. Some truths were too complicated for official reports. The evidence she'd gathered over 2 years had proven invaluable to federal prosecutors. Dominic's empire was being dismantled piece by piece. Associates arrested, assets seized, operations exposed. The FBI had offered her immunity in exchange for testimony. They'd called her a hero, a victim who'd infiltrated a criminal organization to bring it down from within. It was a cleaner narrative than the truth. Dominic had disappeared after the FBI raid. One moment he'd been in custody, loaded into an armored transport. The next, according to reports, there had been an ambush on the Pacific Coast Highway. 3 FBI agents wounded. The prisoner escaped. But Emily knew better. She'd seen the way certain agents had looked at Dominic during those chaotic moments at Corso's estate. The conversations conducted in low voices. The way evidence had been carefully documented, or not documented. Dominic hadn't escaped. He'd been allowed to leave. A deal had been made. The diner's door chimed. Emily's hand instinctively moved toward the gun in her jacket pocket, a habit she'd developed over the past week. But it was just an elderly couple, shaking rain from their jackets. "Maybe he's not coming," Sarah said. "Maybe he'll come." Emily didn't know how she knew, but she did. Dominic Hale was many things, but he kept his word, even to the woman who'd spent 2 years planning to destroy him. At 12:23, a dark sedan pulled into the parking lot. Emily watched as a man stepped out, different than she remembered. Dominic's expensive suits were gone, replaced by jeans and a weathered jacket. His hair was shorter, touched with more gray. He looked older, diminished somehow, like he'd shed a skin and hadn't quite grown into the new one. He entered the diner, spotted them immediately, and walked over with measured steps. His movements were careful, conscious, like a man relearning how to exist in the world. Emily, Sarah. He nodded to each of them, his voice rougher than Emily remembered. "Thank you for coming. We almost didn't," Emily said. Dominic slid into the booth across from them, his back to the wall in an old habit he probably didn't even notice anymore. A waitress approached, but he waved her away gently. "How are you both?" he asked. "Really?" Sarah looked away, her jaw tightening. Emily answered for both of them. "We're alive. That's more than a lot of people can say after last week." "It is." Dominic's hands rested flat on the table, and Emily noticed scars on his knuckles she'd never seen before. Fresh ones. "I heard the FBI gave you immunity, that Sarah's returning to UCLA next semester. Witness protection offered us new identities," Emily said. "New lives, far from California. But Sarah wanted to finish school. She wants to be a doctor, remember? Hard to do that when you're living under a false name in Montana. So you stayed." "We stayed." Emily met his eyes. "The FBI assured us that with Corso dead and your organization dismantled, we're safe. Are they right? Are we safe, Dominic?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to the table. "There are always loose ends. Men who'll carry grudges. People who'll want revenge for what happened. But the structure that held my world together, that's gone. Without it, the threats are manageable. Individual, not organizational. That's not exactly reassuring." Sarah spoke up, her voice harder than Emily had ever heard it. "You're saying we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders because you built an empire on blood?" Dominic flinched slightly, a minute reaction, but Emily saw it. "You're right, and I'm sorry, not just to you, but to everyone who's been hurt by my choices. I know that doesn't mean much. I know sorry doesn't resurrect the dead or heal the trauma, but I need you to hear it anyway." Emily studied him, searching for the manipulation, the angle, but all she saw was exhaustion and something that looked like genuine remorse. "Why did you want to meet?" she asked. "The FBI said you entered witness protection. that you're cooperating with federal prosecutors, testifying against everyone in your organization who's still alive. Why risk exposure by contacting us? Dominic reached into his jacket slowly, pulling out a thick envelope. He set it on the table between them. Because I owed you the truth. All of it. Emily opened the envelope. Inside were documents, old police reports, surveillance photos, witness statements from 15 years ago, her father's case. But these weren't the sanitized versions she'd seen before. These were the raw files, complete with details that had been redacted or sealed. What is this? Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through pages. The real story of what happened to Marcus Carter. Dominic's voice was steady but weighted with something heavy. I told you in the car that your father ordered the hit that killed my sister and nephew. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. He pointed to a specific document, a surveillance report dated 3 weeks before Marcus's arrest. Your father didn't order that hit himself. He was set up. Corso manipulated the intelligence, made it look like Marcus gave the order. The actual command came from Corso's brother, the one who was killed in your father's operation later. Emily's vision blurred as she read. What are you saying? I'm saying Corso played us all from the beginning. Dominic's voice was raw. He wanted both Marcus and me to tear each other apart so he could take over. He fed me false information about who ordered my sister's death. He manipulated Marcus into retaliating against the wrong targets. And when the dust settled, he planned to step into the power vacuum we'd created. But you beat him to it, Emily whispered. You took everything first. I did. And then I spent 15 years believing I'd avenged my family, when really I'd just been Corso's weapon. Dominic's hands clenched. Your father was a criminal, Emily. He wasn't innocent. But the specific crime I destroyed him for, he didn't commit it. And by the time I learned the truth, he was already dead in prison. Sarah grabbed Emily's hand under the table, squeezing hard. Emily felt like the ground had opened beneath her, all her certainties crumbling. 15 years of hatred, redirected. 2 years of planning revenge against a man who'd been manipulated as much as she had. Why tell me this now? Emily's voice cracked. Why not let me go on believing the simple version? Because you deserve the truth. Because I've spent 15 years lying to myself about who I was and what I'd done, and I won't add lying to you to that list. Dominic stood slowly, like his bones ached. I can't give you back your father. I can't undo the damage Corso caused, or the damage I caused trying to stop him. But I can give you the truth. It's the only thing I have left that's worth anything. He pulled out another envelope, thinner this time, and set it beside the first. That's account information for an offshore fund. $8 million. Everything I managed to hide from the FBI before they froze my assets. It's yours. For your mother's medical bills that went unpaid. For Sarah's education. For whatever life you want to build now. We don't want your money, Emily said, but her voice lacked conviction. I know, take it anyway. Use it to do something good. Something that breaks the cycle instead of perpetuating it. Dominic stepped back from the table. I'm leaving California. The FBI has me set up somewhere in the Midwest with a new name, a new history. I'll spend the next decade testifying at trials, helping put away everyone I used to work with. And then, if I live that long, I'll disappear completely. What will you do? Sarah asked quietly. After the trials? Dominic smiled, but it was sad. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe that's what I deserve. A small life with no power, no respect, no empire, just existence. He looked at Emily. What about you? What will you do now that revenge is off the table? Emily thought about it. The question she'd been avoiding for 7 days, since the moment everything she'd planned for had dissolved into chaos and FBI raids and uncomfortable truths. Sarah's going back to UCLA to become a doctor, she said slowly. And I think I'm going to go back to school too. Social work maybe, or counseling. Something that helps people escape the kind of life we've all been trapped in. That sounds right for you. Dominic's voice was soft. You were always too good for my world, Emily. Even when you were planning to destroy me, there was something in you that didn't belong in the darkness. Don't romanticize me, Emily said sharply. I infiltrated your house for 2 years. I pushed you off a balcony. I'm not some innocent victim. No, Dominic agreed. You're a survivor who made hard choices in impossible circumstances. Just like your father. Just like me. Just like everyone who's ever been caught in the gears of this machine we built. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Emily, pushing me off that balcony saved my life. If you'd let the explosion kill me, you'd never have learned the truth about Corso, about any of it, so thank you for the fall and everything that came after." He walked out without another word. Emily and Sarah watched through the window as he climbed into his sedan and drove away, disappearing up Highway 1 into the rain and mist. "Do you believe him?" Sarah asked after a long silence. "About Dad? About Corso manipulating everything?" Emily looked at the documents spread across the table. Police reports, witness statements, evidence that could be verified, cross-referenced, proven or disproven. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And if it's true, then what?" Sarah's voice was small. "If everything we believed was a lie, what do we do with that?" Emily gathered the envelopes, tucking them carefully into her jacket. Through the window, the Pacific Ocean churned gray and endless, wearing away at ancient rocks one wave at a time. Nothing permanent, everything in motion, constantly reshaping itself. "We do what survivors do," Emily said finally. "We grieve, we heal, we try to build something better from the ashes of what burned. Is that enough? I don't know, but it's what we have." 3 months later, Emily sat on the steps of the community college in Pasadena, watching students flow around her like water around a stone. She'd enrolled in the social work program, starting over at 24, with a transcript full of gaps and a history too complicated to explain. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Aced my biochem midterm. Celebratory dinner tonight?" Emily smiled, typing back a quick response. Sarah was thriving at UCLA, throwing herself into her studies with renewed purpose. The nightmares were less frequent now. The fear was learning to coexist with hope. The offshore account Dominic had left them sat mostly untouched. Emily had used some to pay off her mother's old medical debts, had set aside money for Sarah's education. The rest would go to scholarships for kids from broken homes, families torn apart by the criminal justice system. Blood money transformed into something useful, if not quite clean. She'd verified the documents Dominic gave her. Every detail checked out. Corso had orchestrated everything, playing her father and Dominic against each other while positioning himself to seize power. Marcus Carter had been a criminal, but not the specific kind of monster Emily had believed him to be. And Dominic Hale had been a weapon wielded by a man even more ruthless than himself. It didn't absolve anyone, but it complicated the narrative Emily had lived with for 15 years. Her phone buzzed again, a number she didn't recognize. The message was brief. "Thank you for the truth. Living quietly now. Building something small and honest. Hope you and Sarah are well." Emily stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. Dominic Hale was part of her past now, a chapter closed, if not forgotten. She wouldn't respond, wouldn't maintain contact. Some bridges needed to burn completely for new ones to be built. But she hoped in whatever small life he was building in whatever anonymous Midwest town, he found something resembling peace. Not redemption, that wasn't possible for men like him, but maybe understanding, maybe acceptance of what he'd been and what he'd lost. Emily stood shouldering her backpack and joined the flow of students heading to afternoon classes. Introduction to Social Work Theory. The syllabus promised discussions of trauma, cycles of violence, systemic injustice, and the small, difficult work of helping people heal. It felt right. After 2 years of planning destruction, she would learn construction. After 15 years of nurturing hatred, she would study compassion. It wouldn't erase the past. Nothing could do that, but it might build a future worth living in. As she walked across campus, Emily thought about that night on the balcony, the moment she'd pushed Dominic into open air seconds before everything exploded. They'd both fallen, they'd both survived, and now in their separate ways, they were both trying to figure out how to stand again. The autumn sun broke through California's perpetual haze, painting the campus in gold. Emily turned her face toward it, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with revenge or rage or the weight of ghosts she'd carried for too long. She was 24 years old. She had a sister who would become a doctor. She had a chance to help others escape the cycles that had nearly destroyed them both. It wasn't the ending she'd planned. It wasn't the revenge she'd spent years perfecting. But maybe, just maybe, it was better. Sometimes the universe pushed you off a balcony to teach you how to fly. And sometimes in the falling, you learned that survival wasn't about landing perfectly. It was about choosing, when you finally hit the ground, to stand back up and walk towards something new. The end. Epilogue. 5 years later, Emily Carter stood at a podium in a community center in South Los Angeles, addressing a room full of teenagers from the foster care system. She'd founded the program herself, using what remained of Dominic's money, creating pathways for kids from broken homes to find education, counseling, and hope. Sarah sat in the front row, now in her third year of medical school, volunteering at the free clinic that partnered with Emily's program. In a small town in Iowa, a man who'd once been called Dominic Hale finished his shift at a construction company and went home to a modest apartment. He lived alone, worked honest hours, and testified via video link at the trials that continued to dismantle what he'd built. He would never be forgiven. He knew that. But he could be useful. And in the mathematics of redemption, usefulness was the only currency he had left. Vincent Corso was buried in an unmarked grave outside Malibu, his empire scattered to the winds, his name a cautionary tale about the price of ambition. Marcus Carter remained dead, his truth complicated, his legacy claimed by a daughter who'd learned that revenge and justice were different countries with no shared border. And in the spaces between, in the lives rebuilt, the cycles broken, the small acts of choosing differently, something new grew from the ashes of what had burned, not perfect, not healed, but alive, and sometimes that was enough.